This is Wendy Montroy, and you're listening to Turtle Tea with TTPG. We're bringing you bite-sized turtle and tortoise species, care, and husbandry info. This show is brought to you by the Turtle and Tortoise Preservation Group, whose mission is to ensure the survival of the world's turtles and tortoises through captive breeding. Today we are talking to Michael of Shelled Friends. Thank you for being here today. We're going to be talking about Tabasco Mud Turtles, or Kinosternon acutum. Can you tell me how you got started with this species?
Well, if you knew me 10 years ago, you probably wouldn't be asking me that question because I was into anything and everything. I would tell people when I moved to the US, I was like a kid in a candy shop. Mom wasn't here to tell me, no, you can't have that. So I was into everything. And today, too, if I had the space and resources to build a greenhouse or everything, I probably would attempt to keep every single species. Acutum, specifically called out, they're small, they're colorful for a mud turtle. A lot of them, having seen the eastern muds and stuff that aren't very colorful, this was a very colorful species. And also due to credit to my friend Curtis, who's great at taking wonderful pictures of his hatchlings, it was like love at first sight. I still took a couple of years before I jumped in. And fun fact, the 1 year I missed the TDPG conference in 2018, there was a natural disaster locally. I decided to be with family rather than be out there. And I guess I felt, an itch because I missed out on the conference. I needed something. So Curtis had a few hatchlings that he posted after the conference. I'm like, I'll take it. I need something to keep me engaged when I'm away from home, evacuated. So that's how it happened. Picked up 3 hatchlings from him.
Great. Let's take a quick look into their natural history. It's important to understand an animal's natural history before you keep them in captivity. From looking at it, it looks like their native range is the Tabasco lowlands, which kind of cuts through Mexico, Belize, and Guatemala. Is that right?
Correct. They found actually the book Turtles of Mexico talks about a discovery of a group in 1995 in Veracruz, and I guess up until that point they thought that was a rare species, and then they found a large enough group that provided actually most of the data for the studies and the notes in that particular book. Yeah.
Okay, and it looks like they mostly live in kind of shallow water, streams, marshes, and ponds, and possibly they estivate on land during a dry season. Does that sound right?
That is, yeah. So right, starting around March in the wild. Of course, you don't see that in captivity. Depends on what you try to simulate. I have friends who let the water level drop starting in March or something, so they don't replenish water when it evaporates. And that seems to serve as a cue both for acutum and with some friends with Claudius, angustatus, as well, the vampire musk turtles, both then kind of migrate to land area and dig in. Some of the friends also then boost the wattage of the bulb they're using over the land area. That then increases the warmth as well. For me, thankfully, naturally, the entire room where I have the animals with me changing the light duration and bumping up the temperature, it just naturally elevates the temperature high 80s and they just kind of dig in. But if I water that area, missed it, they'll start emerging again. They're like, okay, wait a second. Is it time to come out? And then they might go back again. Yeah.
So are they fully carnivorous? They don't eat plants at all?
Not unless they are, accidentally ingesting duckweed. Yeah. Even I have this luck with I have a broken sulcata. I have a lot of broken animals that don't do what they meant to do. So even with pellets, these guys will be a little bit picky. So I feed quite a bit of snails, live fish, mosquito fish if they are inclined to go for it, and red wigglers or earthworms. Because the red wigglers, a lot of folks also call the composting worms red wigglers. So I'm talking about a different species. I don't remember the Latin name, but Timberline sells them. It's a different species. So that makes up the large portion of the diet for my animals. Once a week, they'll get pellets and they go for it.
So I've heard that they are nocturnal and somewhat shy in the wild. How do you find them in captivity?
In captivity, with and my animals being captive hatched, and not wild caught animals that had to acclimate, I see them throughout the day. They do not exhibit a marked preference or, shying away, you know, during daytime. But I also set them up the land area where I set the heat lamp on one side and blasting in, but put plants in between the other end. That way, if they want to, they can go hide behind the plants and be shielded from the light. And I see them doing that a lot. Um, but if I start feeding them or anything, they're like, "Oh, the ape is here. They're out. They're doing what the turtles do." Yeah, they don't dig in. Um, they Crassicolus, I have some as well. They come out a lot more during the evening time. These guys are out during the daytime as well.
Okay, well, that's good to
Yeah.
know. Do you know if wild caught animals are still being imported or is it all
I
captive bred now?
What we are seeing is captive bred.
Okay.
Some wild caught animals do become available, but they have been with the keepers for a while. I haven't seen any recent imports, at least not marked as true wild caught, imports come in. I couldn't
Okay.
find information when I went looking on the CITES status, actually. I think you were talking about that. No authorized export that I've seen.
Yeah, they're actually, it looks like in 2023 they were listed as CITES 2, which I think is no export.
I'll have to double check that. I don't know the source. I don't know if you found it in the CITES website itself,
Yeah.
which is good, which is good news. And I guess honestly, the truth is they once the group establishes, they reproduce quite big. I
Okay.
mean, with three females, yes, not as much as a sinensis does, but with three females, I easily end up with about 20 hatchlings a year.
Wow.
That is not counting the number of eggs I screw up and don't end up hatching. So they can be very prolific, and their egg laying season is roughly about 5 to 6 months. They start in fall and
Wow.
go all the way till February, March. Yeah, so they with a captive bred group, you get quite a few hatchlings, and thankfully, many of our friends in the hobby are now hatching them. I don't know that if there is a need for fresh wild caught animals to come in and have to get used
That's
to
actually good.
acclimate.
I know the IUCN listed them as near threatened, but it looks like the last assay was like 96. So who knows
30
what
years
state they're
ago,
in?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
If you ever had the privilege, or if you were on the receiving end of talking about crassicolus to me, I probably would have not forgotten to mention this IUCN listing with that species, the two assessment they did. Between the two assessment, it went from, concern or species of concern or vulnerable to
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, now it's threatened. So to your point here, 30 years, no assessment has been done. Who knows what the status
So,
is?
right, they could be in bad shape and we just wouldn't know.
Right, exactly. So IUCN is a great tool as a reference point, but I think at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I think people. That's why I'm also not a big fan of when people associate common with names. I'm like, well, it's common now, but how long, and what's going to happen? So
Yeah.
I guess the bottom line is, if you have the opportunity to get some acutum, go for it. It won't disappoint you.
So, yeah, it looks like in the wild, traditionally they were eaten a lot and kind of still are, even though it's prohibited. So that's kind of bringing down their numbers. And they've got that such a restricted range. I could very easily see them being in trouble.
Yeah, I think I have to go back and jog my memory. I don't know if the eating of that species in the wild is just related to a religious or a seasonal thing. I can't remember. There was some
I think
mention because
it's
it's a
a
very
cultural, yeah.
yeah, it's a very small species. There's not a lot of meat on them, So I mean, it's like, I don't know. I suppose if you put a hefty price tag and package it as a, hey, this is a really rare, treat. So it's only little, but you're paying a high price, maybe. But yeah, there isn't a lot of meat on this critter. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's dive into captive care. Would you consider them difficult to keep? Are they a beginner friendly species? And I know you mentioned they stay small, so that would lend me to believe they might be okay for beginners.
Yeah. So Reeves turtles was one of my popular recommendations for somebody who was starting. They do get a little larger than acutum, but they're very forgiving, and from a personality wise, people love looking at something that's almost, I call Reeves water puppies. But acutum definitely bumps Reeves, or at least is a top contender for the sport with along with Reeves. They stay small. The largest animal I have is just under 5 inches, actually, the
Wow.
females. They're colorful. I'll send you some pictures. I mean, just not the shell,
Okay.
just the skin coloration. They're just beautiful. They have one of the most stunning eyes I have seen in a turtle. So, and then, of course, captive bred animals act like puppies. They're not shy. They're not aggressive, and with they do well, especially in my case, since I'm not feeding a whole lot of pellets, or water quality is getting messed up. They do well in a 50-gallon setup.
Wow.
So when you take a razorback or a loggerhead musk turtle for comparison, while the SEL might be comparable, loggerhead and razorback especially are very chunky turtles that produce more waste, whereas these guys are pretty compact. Yeah, definitely one of my top recommendations for somebody who's starting out and is kind of driven to aquatics and wants something that's beautiful, not aggressive, and stay small.
So they retain that color through adulthood. Are both the males and the females have that coloration?
They do. I have actually two animals that are wild caught that were handed down to me. One is a male, one female. They still have, I don't know how old they are. They still have beautiful, rich
Wow.
carapace colors and the skin coloration as well. The males have darker coloration, but it's still stunning. I mean, when you see them out of the water, they still have very rich colors. Yeah.
Okay.
If you're good at taking good pictures, which I'm not, but I've still taken some decent pictures of them that I think are stunning. So they are beautiful.
You mentioned that you can keep them in a 50-gallon. How do you keep yours? Like what's the enclosure size? What's your filtration like? Are they in groups? Are they single?
Yeah, they're not aggressive, but males will tend to stay in the water to try to have a chance with the females. So females, when that you see that happening, females can end up spending more time in the land area. So one thing absolutely encourage is don't go for a barren setup, of course, which is never a great idea for any species. Throw in driftwood, plants, create natural side barriers, and I keep mud on the bottom of the water as well, and that keeps the water a little bit murky, and that aids as well. So I haven't seen any aggression or incessant chasing by the male. 3 years in of hatching these, I haven't seen a female with any scars. Just a note there. Now, the I used to have them in a 50-gallon stock tank with an external laying area with about 40 gallons of water for a 1.2 group. They did well, but I've upgraded them to a land area, which gives them slightly a little bit more water and surface area as well. So 1.2 groups in medium waterland tub with land
Okay.
area, of course, heavily planted as well. We have a local grass called deer grass, which is like a fountain grass. They hide under the, and like I mentioned earlier, I have light rather than hanging down, going from the side with, installed on one side. The grass is in the middle, kind of creating and casting shade on the other side. That has worked well for me. I keep I don't know the name of the aquatic plant, something my mother-in-law gave me. I stuck it in an internal Zilla filter, and then I have pothos going in and spreading roots in the water as well. So for filtration, I do not use a canister filter with these guys, just that not overcrowding and not using pellets or leaving leftover pellets behind. With that internal filter and plants, I've been able to maintain the water quality.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you use UV light at all?
I do.
Okay.
UV and a heat lamp, two separate sources. I don't use mercury vapor bulbs anymore. I've
Okay.
moved away from that. I want the animal to have an option. And so on that, I also have two areas where there's light. So on the nesting area or over the nesting area, I have just the heat lamp, and I have also a basking log. This is kind of turning into a Zilla promo event kind of a thing. They a few years ago, I don't know if they still make it. They made like a log turtle landing kind of a thing. So I got one, and that's what I use with these guys. It allows them to easily get out of the water, and I have UV and a heat lamp over that. So if the animal wants to get exposed to UV, they go there. If they just want to stay warm, they go to the nesting area.
And you keep them inside completely? You don't do them outside? Do you think they'd be good candidates in certain parts of the country to be outside?
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
Like in Arizona and in certain parts of Florida,
Okay.
probably. And I mean, again, they can take a little bit of cool temps, even in the low 60s, probably. It's a matter of how long can they take that, right? And so in places like Florida and Arizona, it's going to warm up in the morning. They'll be okay. I kept mine almost exclusively inside. That's just one of my things. I don't move animals in and out, probably because I'm lazy.
Well, it doubles your work, right?
Well, that, and I have this probably an unfounded fear, like I'll add stress to the animal by moving it from taking it from a climate or an environment that's been for 6 months now, and now I'm like, okay, I'm gonna move you, and then I'm gonna bring back. So outdoors, without a doubt, is good, but I just don't feel like I want to do the in and out, so I leave them indoors. This year, I did try moving one of my groups to an outdoor setup, but again, maybe because it was new, they acted like they were restless. I would see them trying to climb out in the land area and stuff. Again, same size, same group of animals. It's not like I even mixed animals. I wasn't sure what was going on. I probably could have given them a little bit more time to acclimate and see what happens, but I was like, no, let me move you back, leave you guys with what you're used to. So they're indoors.
They don't like change, so I could see just I think if you had done that all along since they were young, they might
Probably
be used to it, but otherwise I could, I probably would have done the same thing, seeing signs of stress and just been like, okay, you can come back inside.
Yeah.
Do you heat their water or do you keep it like room temperature?
I keep them, so in the wintertime, the water temperature will be in the 70s. In the summertime,
Okay.
it'll go up to low 80s because my room just warms up. That entire room gets warm, really warm in the summertime. And like till September, it'll be in the mid 80s, 86, 87. Water will be like around 83. So I do not use an additional heat source.
Okay.
Yeah, I would probably, if somebody is keeping the room in the winter or at any point in time pretty cool, then I would try to go for like mid 70s. Just keep them in the happiest range there.
And you mentioned like around March, they'll do an estivation thing. Do you have like a set schedule that you do with them to get them to go through that period or?
For at my end, with them being inside, it happens a little later. So I live up in the mountains at 2,500 feet in Northern California. We get freezing temps and some snow. So our spring starts a little late. It gets warm a little bit later. And so around May is when I start seeing higher temperatures inside my animal room. And at that point in time, I bump it up a little bit intentionally as well. That's when I see them digging in into the land area, into the nesting area. Again, it's not a very like a what exactly they will end up experiencing in the wild because there's so much. That room is so humid. I have so many aquatic turtles, so it's not hot and dry, which is what they would experience in the wild. It's hot but humid, but most of them still dig in for when that initial switch in temperature happens, they seem to get out, but maybe then they recognize, oh, hang on a second, this isn't bad. It's still humid. There's still water here. So I start seeing movement after a couple of weeks of quiet, period with that species.
Okay. And you mentioned that you feed red wigglers, not a ton of pellets. Are you feeding them daily? Are you feeding them every other day?
I feed them, the adults, they get fed every other day. Yeah.
Okay.
So and that's when I'm using red wigglers or I'm using fish that we cook or boil, I guess, that we pick, or shrimp. So those three, if I'm feeding it with for my other turtles, then they get that every other day. But snails, they have bladder snails. I don't know again the Latin name. That's in the enclosure itself. They reproduce quite fast. And there's also a lot of those aquatic invertebrates, the tiny things that look like aliens crawling around. I don't know if you know
Yeah.
which one I'm talking about. I think they call them water fleas, maybe.
Yeah.
So there's that from the aquatic plants, and they kind of those mostly live in the filter media. So they have those little things to snack on, and then live mosquito fish. I don't know how much of the mosquito fish they eat because I see quite a few hatchlings swimming around. Yeah. And pellets, they get pellets once a week in the weekend before I do a little bit of water change or switch some of the water.
Are these guys, would you consider them expensive or hard to get in captivity, or are they pretty readily available?
They are becoming readily available, I would say.
Okay.
Largely, probably also because there isn't a whole lot of demand. When the demand increases, which I hope happens, which is a good thing, hopefully more people will get in and more hatchlings will come through. But right now I see hatchlings available and there's not a whole lot of interest. They used to be expensive because not a lot of them were being hatched out. But I think now we have a handful of people, if not a couple of handful of people hatching them, and still not a lot of demand. So the price has come down even between last year and this year. It's come down like about $100, which again for the species, I think it's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know if they've ever been offered on the TTPG surplus list or donated via the CPP? And I just want to have a quick note for anyone who's listening who doesn't know what the CPP is. That's the Colonian Propagation Program, which is a benefit to all members of TTPG and furthers the group's mission of establishing assurance colonies for all species. Our members can donate or receive animals through the program. So do you know if they've ever been available?
Yes, to both actually. As a matter of
Oh,
fact, they might
great.
have gone to CPP before we even made it, or before I made them available even on the surplus list. That was so for me personally. Pretty much everything I'm hatching, at least a couple of hatchlings of every species, will go to CPP. Like I mentioned, again, it doesn't matter if it's considered an exotic or non-exotic species. Every one of them is exotic in their own right. So yes, short answer, yes.
Oh, that's amazing. Do you have any similar species and kind of size and care requirements that you would recommend along with these guys?
They are often actually, they look a lot like, now this one, the Latin name, the last name, I might not pronounce it properly, the Creasari, Kinosternon Creasari, Creasri. I'll have to ask somebody how to pronounce it. They're often confused with them. They look a lot like them.
Okay.
Now, unless you keep them both and you compare them, the Creasari has a larger head and the colors are a little less muted, but you know how there are individuals with exceptional coloring. So
Yeah.
it's if you're looking at, it's a hard, little bit can be a little bit hard to differentiate. Those are very similar. But honestly, if you cared for a common musk turtle, you will have no problem caring for acutum. They are
Okay.
super adaptive. And I'll tell a little bit about it when we talk about hatchling care, probably. But they are super easygoing. You don't have to break a sweat, and they will readily accept pellets. So, I mean, if you feed them just pellets, they will be fine with that too. I just thankfully now have access to worms and the snails and everything in quantities that's not, having me turn to pellets heavily. So I've been able to get away with it.
Okay. Is there anything on captive care that we missed that you think people should know, or did we cover it all?
Don't overcrowd them, even though they are small and not aggressive. Don't overcrowd them. Just like with any species, try to strike for the balance in the ecosystem. Then you're not going to be worrying about, oh, I need a better filtration and all. Like I said, I literally use a Zilla internal filter. Now, I should clarify it's the old model, which, basically kind of just looks like a box with a pump underneath, below the housing unit. What I've done, of course, is, sorry, Mark, I do not use the Zilla filter pads again, so those who know me, I'm super cheap. So what I've done is I've taken the bulk filter mats or pads. I cut them into
Yeah.
small squares, rectangles, whatever it ends up coming out. I pack the container with that. And then I have live plants in there, growing in there. So I'll take those out. In some ways, it's kind of like the old Skippy filter, if you're familiar with that. The idea behind the old Skippy filter was take a stock tank, almost it's like creating a bog filter kind of a thing, set it up with biological media, let stuff get caught in it, and let the bacteria do its job. So this is kind of like that, and it has done well for me, which I believe is because I'm not overloading the system. Absolutely nothing fancy. You don't, like I said again, if you have been successful caring for common musk turtles, you can take that, apply that with these guys. I keep mud at the bottom, like I mentioned, just because they are kind of bottom walkers. They are mud turtles. And, it just kind of felt natural. So I've given them that option.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for joining me today. For our listeners, be sure to catch our next episode about Tabasco mud turtle breeding and hatchling care. If people have questions, where can they find you?
Ooh, probably in the TTPG group. But email is the best way. Support at shellfriends.com, or if you're a TTPG member and want to catch me on that side, michael@ttpg.org.
Thank you for joining us for Turtle Tea with TTPG. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. We're brewing up new episodes twice a month, every first and third Monday. If you have any questions or suggestions for future topics, you can reach me at Tortoise Wendy on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, or send an email to tortoisewendy@gmail.com. Until next time, keep on learning, listening, and loving those turtles.